Okay, gospel bass lines. How's everybody doing? Well, thanks for tuning in to today's lesson. I'm going to cover something. I've had a few requests from a few viewers for me to cover the number system. So we're going to go ahead and look at the number system today. Some of the pros and cons, some interesting things about the number system, how you can use it, different ways to use it, different ways different musicians may use it. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's lesson on the number system. So I'm going to work out of the key of C, C major. Let's just start with the C major scale, and then we'll apply the numbers to the scale, and we'll kind of see how the number system works and try to look at some of the, I guess, the good things about the number system. So we'll go to the key of C. I'm on a 5-string bass. I'm going to go to my A string, the 3rd fret. I'm going to start here with my middle finger. I'm just going to play a C major scale in just this one position here. I'm going to play C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So I played a C major scale in one position. I'm going to play it again slowly. So you can see that I'm using 4 fingers for 4 frets. And I'm just playing C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So when you're using a number system, and for this instance we're in a major key, we're in C major. So the way the number system works is you take the key signature that you're in and you simply apply a number to every note of the scale. Naturally you would start with the root. So since we're in the key of C major, we'll start with C as being 1. So C becomes 1, and then each number would follow, the same order that the notes would follow. So C would be 1, D would be 2, E would be 3, F would be 4, and so on. G is 5, A is 6, B would be 7, and C would be 1. So for the most part, if you're playing a song and say it's in a major key and someone is calling out numbers, you could just apply the numbers to the scale. So if it's the first note of the scale, they'll say 1. And if it's the second note of the scale, they'll say 2. And if it's the third note of the scale, someone will say 3. So you're playing the 3, or the third note of the scale. The 4 would be the 4th note of the scale. The 5 would be the 5th note of the scale. The 6 would be the 6th note of the scale. And the 7 would be the 7th note of the scale. And then back to 1 again in the next octave. So let's say you had a chord progression, and the chord progression was 1, 5, 6, 4. And you may not know the song, you may not know the progression going into the song, but you have a keyboardist or a guitarist or whoever is calling out chords, and let's say they call out, they say 1. So you'd go to the 1. Now here's how this works, and here's where it might get a little tricky. The number system, because it's just based on numbers and not note names, the good thing about it is that the same numbers apply to every key signature. So if I'm in the key of C, and someone says the progression of the song is 1, 4, 5, so they call out 1, they call out 4, then they call out 5. I played that pattern based upon the major scale being in the key of C. I played the 1, which is C. I played the 4, which is F, the 4th note in the key of C. And I played the 5, which is G, the 5th note in the key of C. And then back to 1. Well, that's cool. Let's say we take that up a half a step to D flat, and the same number pattern applies. The chord progression is still 1, 4, 5. So in the key of D flat major, D flat now becomes 1. And so 4 will become G flat is 4, then A flat is 5, and then back to 1. Now if you look at my hands, the shapes that I'm creating, if you look, I'm playing the 1, and I'm in the same fret, just dropping down a string, going to the 4. And on that same string, just moving over 2 frets to the 5, and back to 1. Now naturally I could change my octaves if I wanted to. I could play the 1 here, or play the 1 down here, and play the 4 here, or here. I could play the 5 here, or the octave of that 5, and back to 1. So I can move it around. So we can see right away one of the good features of the number system is that it doesn't matter what key you're in, the numbers always apply. to that scale. And right now we're working with the major scale, with the major scale, applying those numbers. So whether I'm in C, D flat, D, E flat, it really doesn't matter. That 1, 4, 5 number system would apply. So if the song I'm playing had 1, 4, 5, I'd play 1, 4, 5. If the song modulates, it goes to a higher key signature. Let's say moving by half steps, it goes from C to D flat major. When I get to the next key, they can still call it the same numbers. That's kind of a cool feature of the number system. It's still 1, 4, 5, back to 1. If we go up another half step to D, 1, 4, 5, 1, and so on. 1, 4, 5, 1. If you notice, even my finger shapes, I can kind of use the same shape with every key signature. After I get to a certain point, it might start a little high and maybe a little hollow, this high up on the neck, and I can drop down to a lower range, but still following that same pattern. So the numbers won't change, no matter what key you're in. So that's one of the good things about the number system. No matter what key you're in, you can call out numbers. It comes in very handy when you're playing in a live setting that might be noisy. When you've got several board players, maybe guitarists, maybe more than one, a drummer, singers, a lot going on stage, it can get really noisy. And sometimes it's hard to hear note names when they're being called out. Let's say if I was in the key of D flat. There's been many times I've played and guys, will try to over enunciate because of the noise, and they you're trying to read their lips, so they over enunciate. They're like D flat, D flat. And when you hear them shouting it, sometimes it might sound like B flat, because that's just the way our alphabet is the letters just rhyme with each other, B, C, D. It's hard to tell sometimes what the person is saying. So the number system comes in handy because the numbers don't rhyme really like the letters do. So you can say 1 and everybody can kind of hear 1 versus 2. It doesn't sound the same at all, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. None of those numbers, they rhyme, none of them rhyme with each other. Whereas the notes can be hard to hear sometimes, especially when you're saying a note name and followed by flat or something followed by sharp. It's really hard to hear. So it becomes difficult if you're in the key of D flat, but because people can't distinguish D flat, they start shouting out C sharp. So now you're thinking like C sharp, and then the next note is E flat, and you're getting confused because naturally in a key signature you either have sharps or you have flats, and you don't have both. In written music you might see an accidental, but for the most part you have either flats in the key signature or sharps, or in the key of C there's no sharps or flats. So when you're calling out, C sharp, E flat, F sharp, A flat, that can get confusing to some musicians, especially those who learned by reading before they learned how to play by ear, because they're trying to figure out how do I combine sharps and flats in one key signature. Well, technically you can't, but because of the difficulty in hearing in a live setting, sometimes it's easier to say one name over the other. But here's where the number system really comes in handy. Is imagine how much time it takes for you to say, let's say if I was in the key of D flat. The time it takes for me to say D flat, D flat, G flat, A flat. Well, that can get a little hard, especially if it's coming really fast. If you're walking down a scale and the notes are coming back, back to back, and you could either say walk down the scale if people know the scale very well, or you can call note names D flat, C, B flat, A flat, G flat, F, E flat, D flat. Or it'll be a lot easier to say 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And of course that's easier for the musician to process if you say just walk down the scale, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now they're not so much confused with thinking about key signatures, like wait, D flat, C, is that the same key? Yeah, I guess that is. Oh, it is a major scale. D flat, C, B flat, A flat, G flat. Okay, all those notes are. That can get confusing to certain musicians if they're not really fluent, with the scales. So the number system has a lot of advantages. It's really quick. It's easy to use. One of the disadvantages, however, of the number system is that if you're playing and you're trying to outline a chord sometimes, the number system just really tells almost like the bass note. That's really what you're getting, is the bass note. Based upon that scale, what is that bass note? It doesn't tell you what type of chord is being applied. And a lot of times keyboard players may go through a variety of different chords even on one note. So while you might be holding the 1 in D flat major, they may play 3 or 4 different chords there. So if you're wanting to outline the chord, the number system alone kind of leaves you just guessing. At least you know the root note, but is it a major third or a minor third? What are they playing? Are they playing a major chord, a minor chord? Are they going to do something diminished? Are they going to play an 11 chord, sharp 11, sharp 9, sharp 5, a flat 9, flat 5? I mean, there's so many things that could happen, on that one chord. The options can go on major sevens. They can do added notes. So there's so much that can happen. So the number system gives you the bass note. Then you have to kind of trust your ear for what type of chord is being played. So if you're wanting to really outline those chords, like let's say on the one, if you know it's a major chord, then you can outline. You can use your major arpeggio, 1, 3, 5, and 1. You can do things like that. You can use your major pentatonic, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, because you know that those notes will go with the chord that's being played. But if you don't know what the chord is, the number system just kind of gives you the bass note. Then you've got to kind of figure out what is the chord that they're playing. And sometimes they might change the chord every time around. That just may be how it is, and you've got to just really adapt. So the number system has its advantages and it has some disadvantages. Another disadvantage is that you don't really get familiar with your key signatures if you always depend upon the number system. And it's good to take some time to really learn key signatures. In other words, learning note names and not just shapes, and the patterns that are on the bass. The bass guitar can be an easy instrument to play because you can use the same finger shapes no matter what key you're in. So you can kind of get away with never learning your key signature as a bass player. And that comes back to haunt you when you get to certain environments where they're calling out note names. And I've had many instances where I was playing in a live setting and on the spot, guys are calling out note names. And sometimes they mix the number system with note names. So it's kind of good to know both. Learn your number system, but also learn the names of the notes. Learn your key signatures. Learn how many sharps and flats are in every key signature. Just take some time and sit down with it. If you don't have a source for that, I can recommend a few, or through Gospel Basslines, we'll definitely have that available for you on our website. If it's not there yet, we'll definitely put it there. And whatever resources we can give you to help you. But it's important to learn your note names, and maybe we'll even do a video about that in the future, just learning the note names on the bass. So we did the number system with the major scale. It applies the same way with the minor scale, but I'll show you where it gets a little tricky. It depends on who you're playing with to how easy it is to apply the number system. If we go back to C again, and now let's look at C minor. Let's play the C minor scale. It's C, D, E flat. Notice I'm using 4 fingers, 4 frets again, but instead of starting on my first finger, instead of starting on my second finger, I'm starting on my first finger for the minor scale. And I'm going to use 4 fingers, 4 frets just to play it in this one position. I'm going to play C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and C. Now I'm going to apply my number system the way it's commonly used. So whatever the root is, that will be the 1. So we're in C minor, so therefore C would be 1, D would be 2, E flat would be 3, F would be 4, G is 5. I'm sorry, I was thinking of something I want to point out. If you notice that some of those intervals are the same in the major scale as they are in the minor scale, right? So C is still 1, D is still 2, but now E flat is 3 in the minor scale. F is 4, G is still 5, so F is 4, G is still 5, but now we've got A flat that is 6 instead of A natural. And then we've got B flat is 7 instead of B natural, and then C. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so it applies the same way with the minor scale as it does with the major scale. Here's where, however, it gets a little tricky with the numbers. There's actually 2 things I want to point out. One is, first of all, dealing with the sevenths. Sometimes you may be in a major key. You may be in C major and you're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. But in the song there may be an accidental where you don't play the major 7, which would be B, but you play the dominant 7, or the minor 7 it might be referred to. We'll refer to it as a dominant 7 because usually it's just the 7 is changing and not the third. In other words, it's usually called a dominant 7 when there's a major third in the key. If there's a major third in the key, then your 7th is not your major 7, but it's lower half a step. We don't necessarily call it a minor 7, but we call it a dominant 7. It's, which is like based on that blues sound. So you might have a song that's in C major. It's truly in C major. You know, you got a major third, 4, 5, but then you go to this flat 7 or this dominant 7, and then it's usually followed by the 4, and then back to 1. Like the presence of the Lord is here. Let's say we were in C major, you know, and we played 3, 4, 5. So the presence of the Lord is here. So we're using our number system. 3, 4, 5. You get this dominant 7 or this flat 7, right? So we don't really call it a minor 7, but we'll call it a flat 7. And different people might call it a minor 7. They may call it a dominant 7, just as long as you know what note to play on the bass. If you're playing keys, it becomes more of an issue. But if you're just playing bass notes, it's not so much a big deal, as long as you know it's not the major 7. So you get this dominant 7, you know, then the 4, back to 1. So that can happen sometimes. So you have to kind of listen out for that, you know. Even though you know that the major scale, B, would actually be 7. Most musicians, most keyboard players have enough, you know, awareness and enough courtesy to make sure they remind you that it is a dominant 7. They'll say, you know, flat 7, or, which is easier to say than dominant 7 in a live setting. So they'll say flat 7, you know. Some might say minor 7, as long as you know that it's not the major 7, but it's half a step lower than that. Okay. What else happens? When you're, a lot of times when a song's in a minor key, but it kind of fluctuates between that relative and that relative major and minor. Relative meaning C minor. If you look at C minor, the scale, you've got C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. Well, the key signature for C minor has what? E flat, A flat, and B flat. Those 3 flats: B flat, E flat, and A flat. If you say them in order on the staff, B flat first, E flat, then A flat. That's how we would say them in order, the way it would be written on a sheet of music. And so there's 3 flats there. Well, that's the same key signature for E flat major. So C minor and E flat major, they're called relative major and minors. C minor, then E flat major. They both have 3 flats and it's the same flat. E flat, they're the same flats. E flat, A flat, and B flat. E flat, A flat, and B flat. Let's see if we can hear them. So we have C, D, E flat, A flat, B flat, C. We go to the major. E flat, A flat, B flat, E flat. So they have the same key signature. So sometimes when you have a song that might start off in that relative minor, you know, it just depends on the musicians you're playing with. You might call everything from C minor being the 1, but then it might go to, you know, E flat major for the remainder of the song, and then they might call that 1 again. That's where it gets a little tricky. So you've got to agree upon what is 1. There's a lot of songs that do that. They start off, you know, on that minor, but then at some point they kind of resolve major, or maybe they start major and they kind of resolve minor. And so make sure you agree upon with the musicians, what do you call 1. A lot of musicians never call the minor root 1. A lot of times they'll call that 6, because that's really what it is in the major scale. If I was in E flat major, and pretty much if you look at classical theory, everything's based upon the major scale. In classical theory, when you give a number to the note names of the scale, if it's in a minor key, it gets the little lowercase, you know, what is it? The lowercase v and the lowercase I with the dot, which would be 6, right? Then you'll see 7 the same way, the lowercase v and the dot dot. Then you get to 1, you get a capital I, meaning, you know, so that's the 1. So you would see 6, 7, 1 would, the 1 would always be, you know, the major key, the relative major. So it depends on who you're with. You know, some guys I've played with, no matter, you might be in C minor, they'll call that 6. Because in their mind, they're thinking that, you know, the relative major, that's what has superiority, it has supremacy. It would be called 1. So you just got to work that out with the band. You know, if the song is just riding a minor all the way through, you know, more than likely they're going to say, hey, we'll call, you know, the minor root the 1. But if it's going to be fluctuating between that minor and major a lot, you know, it might be, you might play minor, 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 minor. So you're like in C minor, B flat, A flat, G7, to the diminished. Back then I just did a diminished arpeggio, 1. You know, back to that minor 1, but at some point in the song it might go to the 5, and then go to 1, you know, there. A good example is a song like Yes, Shekinah Glory. There is more that I require of thee. That kind of thing. And then when you get to the yes part, say yes, yeah. So at that point, the rest of the song is in the major, the relative major. So he didn't change keys, but some guys might change the number. So they may start off just saying that C is 6. In your mind, you're thinking, well, we start in C minor, so why isn't that 1? Well, they're just using the relative terminology. So if they're calling it 6, you just kind of put it together. Okay, so they're calling E flat 1. If they call C minor 1, then you know that they're looking at E flat as being 3, which could get a little confusing when you get to that vamp when everything is in that major scale. So it's something you need to work out with the band. Just kind of know what to expect when they start calling out numbers. But for the most part, that's the number system. There are some other numbers you might hear. We'll go ahead and fill in the gaps now. Let's just go back to C major. You might hear 1, and instead of 2, sometimes you might hear somebody say flat 2 or flat 9, depending on, if they're going to use the proper terminology or if they're just using what's easy to say. Technically it would be flat 9, but they might say flat 2. You just know that if this is 1 and this is 2, then flat 2 is just there. If they say sharp 2 or minor third, they should never say sharp 2. They should say either minor third or they should say sharp 9. But again, you might hear everything. I've heard it all. I've heard, double flat 1, which you could just say minor 7, So you might hear a little bit of everything. It might sound humorous, but I've heard it all. So just be prepared for the numbers. 4, then you've got flat 5, technically is what it should be called. Some people, again, might say sharp 4. And you just have to kind of accept, what you get. As long as you know that if it's sharp, I go up half a step, and if it's flat, I go down a half a step from wherever it is. So if I have a progression that says 1, 6, I can play 6 here or here. It doesn't matter where you prefer to play it. I try to think about what's coming next when I'm picking my location on the bass. So I might play 1 here, and then 6 here. Then I might say, from the 6, I might walk down to a sharp 5. Which is usually diminished. But your bass note, they'll just call out sharp 5. You might hear somebody say flat 6 or minor 6. It may come out. Just be prepared for whatever. As long as you know which way to go. If they say flat, half a step down from where you were. So if this is 6, go down half a step. Somebody might call out sharp 6. God forbid. They might say sharp 6. When you're looking at that, what's sharp 6? Well, you look at that, it's just the 7, the dominant 7 or the flat 7. Again, just be prepared for whatever you might get, because I've been given all sorts of numbers. So for the most part, just take your scale and apply the numbers to the scale. Talk to the band and agree upon what we're going to call, the 1, if it fluctuates from minor to major. And pretty much you're good to go from that point on. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we haven't covered. So we got 1, 2, 3. You might even hear minor 3 with 3, 4, flat 5 is what you should hear. 5. You might hear a minor 6, or sharp 5, either one or the other, depending on who you're with. Just again, know which way to go. 6, dominant 7 or flat 7 or minor 7. It's all the same note. Or what else could it be called? Yeah, dominant 7, flat 7, minor 7. The major 7, and then back to 1. So have fun with that. Apply the numbers. Ask questions if you have any more questions. Hopefully I covered the number system good enough. There's a lot of numbers that are very common chord progressions and common turnarounds. We've got videos about common chord progressions and turnarounds. Some of the really common chord progressions in a lot of the CCM music. You might hear 1, 4, 6, 5, or you just might hear 1, 4, 5, and there's a lot of them that are pretty common. So kind of get used to a lot of the common chord progressions, and that way when you're in an environment where they're calling out numbers, you're already kind of used to going to those numbers anyways. So that kind of helps out a little bit. The less foreign it is to you, the easier it is to adapt, especially when someone's calling out a number of arrangements that you're not used to, and maybe using like sharp 6, instead of flat 7, or maybe they're saying sharp 4 instead of flat 5. So the more you get used to the common chord progressions, you can kind of, I guess relate what they're trying to say a little quicker. You can respond a lot faster. I believe that's about it. If you have any more questions or comments about the number system, we'd love to hear from you. God bless you. Keep practicing, keep praying. Let the Lord reveal to you as much as you want to learn. Just ask God to reveal it. He'll do it. That's what He did for me. I pray that He does the same thing for you. Be blessed. Have a great evening, great morning, great day, great week, great year. God bless you. That's it for Gospel Based Lines.